Hello, everyone, and welcome back to History and Words, the podcast where we explore amazing stories from the past and improve our English at the same time. And today, we're talking about one of the most famous military leaders in human history, Alexander the Great. Before we start, a quick tip. If you hear a word you don't know, don't worry, just keep listening. I'll often explain difficult words right after I use them, in simple English. That's how you naturally build vocabulary, through context, not memorization. Okay, let's begin. Get comfortable, maybe grab a cup of tea, and let's travel back more than 2,300 years to ancient Greece. Our story begins in 356 BC, in a kingdom called Macedon. That's in the north of Greece. A baby boy was born to King Philip II and Queen Olympias. They named him Alexander. Now, legends say that on the very night Alexander was born, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Temple of Artemis, burned down. People believed this was a sign. A sign here means something that shows a bigger event is coming. Many believed the gods were announcing that someone extraordinary had just entered the world. From a very young age, Alexander was different. He was curious, competitive, and incredibly ambitious. Ambitious means having a strong desire to achieve great things. There's a famous story from when he was just a boy. A wild horse named Bucephalus was brought to the royal court. The horse was so wild that no one could tame it, meaning no one could control it or make it calm. Alexander watched carefully. He noticed the horse was afraid of its own shadow. So he simply turned the horse to face the sun, calmed it with gentle words, and rode it perfectly. His father, King Philip, was amazed. He reportedly said, "My boy, you must find a kingdom big enough for your ambitions. Macedon is too small for you." That horse, Bucephalus, would later carry Alexander into battle across 3 continents. Here's something many people don't know. Alexander had one of the greatest teachers in human history, the philosopher Aristotle. Yes, that Aristotle, the same one whose ideas still influence science, logic, and philosophy today. King Philip hired Aristotle specifically to educate his son. For several years, Alexander studied medicine, philosophy, poetry, and science under him. This shaped, meaning this influenced and formed, Alexander's way of thinking for the rest of his life. In fact, Alexander loved Homer's epic poem, The Iliad, so much that he reportedly kept a copy under his pillow wherever he traveled, even during military campaigns. A campaign, in a military context, means a series of planned battles or operations to achieve a goal. In 336 BC, when Alexander was only 20 years old, his father, King Philip, was assassinated, meaning he was murdered, usually for political reasons. Suddenly, Alexander became king of Macedon. Many people underestimated him because of his age. To underestimate someone means to think they are less capable than they truly are. That was a serious mistake. Alexander quickly crushed rebellions at home and secured his position as king. Then, he turned his attention to something much bigger, the massive Persian Empire, which at the time was the most powerful empire in the world. In 334 BC, Alexander crossed into Asia with an army of about 40,000 soldiers. This might sound like a lot, but the Persian Empire he was about to fight had access to millions of people and vast resources. It seemed almost impossible. But Alexander was a military genius. A genius, of course, means someone with extraordinary intelligence or skill. He won battle after battle. The Battle of Granicus, the Battle of Issus, and eventually the decisive Battle of Gaugamela, where he finally defeated the Persian king, Darius III. One of his greatest strategies was understanding his enemy's weaknesses and adapting quickly. He didn't just rely on brute force. That means raw physical strength. He used clever tactics, and he inspired absolute loyalty in his soldiers. He often fought alongside them on the front lines, sharing their hardships. A hardship is a difficult or painful situation. After conquering Persia, Alexander didn't stop. He continued into Egypt, where he was welcomed as a liberator and even declared a pharaoh. Then he pushed further east into what is now Afghanistan, Pakistan, and eventually India. Here's something important to understand about Alexander. He wasn't only a conqueror. A conqueror is someone who takes control of a place by force. He was also, in his own way, a builder. Everywhere he went, he founded new cities, many of them named Alexandria after himself. The most famous one, Alexandria in Egypt, became one of the greatest centers of learning and culture in the ancient world, home to the legendary Library of Alexandria. He also encouraged the blending of cultures. He married a Persian princess named Roxana, and he encouraged his soldiers to marry local women too. This mixing of Greek and Eastern cultures created what historians now call the Hellenistic period, a time when Greek language, art, and ideas spread across a huge part of the known world. By 326 BC, Alexander's army had reached India. But after years of continuous fighting, far from home, his soldiers were exhausted. They refused to march any further east. This moment is sometimes called the Mutiny at the Hyphasis River. A mutiny means when soldiers refuse to obey their leader. Reluctantly, meaning unwillingly, Alexander agreed to turn back. It's said he wept when he realized there were no more worlds left to conquer in his immediate reach. Sadly, Alexander never made it back home to Macedon. In 323 BC, at just 32 years old, he died in Babylon, in modern-day Iraq. Historians still debate the cause. Some say malaria, others suggest poisoning, and some believe it was a combination of illness and years of injuries from battle. But here's the truly remarkable part. Even though his empire didn't survive intact, his legacy did. A legacy is the lasting impact someone leaves behind after they're gone. Alexander spread Greek culture, language, and ideas across 3 continents. He inspired countless future leaders, including Julius Caesar and Napoleon Bonaparte, who admired his ambition and studied his military tactics for centuries afterward. So why, more than 2,000 years later, are we still talking about Alexander the Great? I think it's because his story asks us big questions. What does it truly mean to be great? Is it about how much territory you control? Or is it about the ideas and culture you leave behind? Alexander conquered with his sword, but he's remembered just as much for the cities, the libraries, and the cultural exchange he created. Let's quickly review some of the key words from today's episode. Ambitious, having a strong desire to achieve great things, to tame, to control or calm a wild animal. Campaign, a series of military operations toward a goal, to assassinate, to murder someone, often for political reasons. To underestimate, to think someone is less capable than they are. Hardship, a difficult or painful situation. Conqueror, someone who takes control of a place by force. Mutiny, when soldiers or a group refuses to obey their leader. Legacy, the lasting impact someone leaves after they are gone. Try answering these questions out loud in English. This is great speaking practice, too. What do you think made Alexander such a successful military leader? Do you think conquering other lands can ever be justified? Why or why not? If you were Alexander's soldier, would you have continued marching into India? Or would you have joined the mutiny? What does greatness mean to you personally? That's it for today's episode of History and Words. If you enjoyed learning about Alexander the Great, try summarizing this episode in your own words, either out loud or in writing. That's one of the best ways to remember new vocabulary and improve your fluency. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, keep learning, keep listening, and keep exploring history.